Mastering Brand Management, Building and Sustaining Strong Brands. We have with us today for this session, chairing the session, Rahul, Vengalil, CEO and co-founder together, and he'll be joined on stage by Nabajit, Nath, Head of Sales India, Blis, Nitin, Khanna, VP Marketing, ACKO, Richa Khera, Global Social Media Director, Schneider Electric, and we have Sampurna, Rakshit, Marketing and E-commerce Head, Mia by Tanishq Titan Company. We also have Varun, Oberoi, VP and Head Marketing and Corporate Communication, Indo, Nissin Foods.
We are trying to discuss, understand, learn something which is very important from a brand point of view. And on a personal, I'll start with a personal note. I personally feel that over the next 3-4 years, when digital is going to saturate or new users are not going to be added, the performance marketing, the cost of acquisition, the way we know it will no longer be there. It is going to be expensive. There will be even more and more newer brands coming into the picture. And in such a scenario, brand is what the moat will be for large companies. So in this session, I'm trying to understand, learn on how we can actually do that going forward as well. So with that, I'll start with Sampurna first. So of late, every one of us have been exposed to multiple of these over-the-top advertising content, right? But if you really look at it, if you put the same brands ad one after the other, there's no really coherence. There is no same messaging or sustained messaging which actually comes in. So in your opinion, what we would like to, or I would like to also understand is, what does it take for the brand across their entire journey to actually have that consistent brand messaging? Is it only advertising? Is it beyond advertising? What is it that it takes?
I think first, the brand needs to be honest about what it stands for. You have to be very clear why the brand exists, who is your TG, what do you stand for, what are your USPs. If you're honest to that, I don't think you will be jumping a lot through various channels. You won't be chasing virality for the sake of virality. Second is a brand goes beyond advertising. Brand touchpoints are not only limited to the kind of ads you see, but your packaging is a touch point, your stores are a touch point, your products are a touch point. So we need to ensure that whatever the brand stands for is translated across the organizations to all the teams that are working on your brand. For example, my brand stands for differentiated design. So for that, I need to ensure that my factory is equipped to do that. They have the mindset to not say no to a complex design. My visual merchandising should be such that in my store, my complex designs come alive, they are celebrated. My packaging needs to be such that the complex design doesn't get scratched on the way. And then finally comes my advertising. So when I'm consistent across all of these touch points, when everybody is talking the same language, it's not very difficult to have a coherent image.
Understood. Great. So jumping from the entire process to the social media world, where you have a truckload of content creation which actually happens, where a lot of brands ask for multiple number of posts to be made, videos to be made, etc., etc. To Richa, in such a environment where some brands are doing 30 pieces of content, some brands are doing 100 pieces of content, some brands are doing, I don't know, even more. How do you think a brand can actually have a consistent messaging? Because the touch points are so many these days. Now, there will be something for Facebook, something for TikTok, something for Instagram, something for etc., so on and so forth. So what do you think should be the approach over there?
So I think I'll probably start off building by what Sampurna also said, right? A brand is not just the visual identity. It truly goes beyond that. So everything to do with the brand voice, the verbiage, your core values, right? That truly defines who you are. So at the heart of it is really your mission, purpose. What does the brand really stand for, right? And then you start building around it by way of Visual semantics, then like I said, brand voice, verbiage, what you use. Also employees for that matter. A brand is also cutting across your employees, your channel partners, your distributors in very large, complex, manufacturing businesses like ours. Channel partners are, extremely important. So the touch points truly just go beyond social or even, storefronts or packaging, etc. Right? It's really about probably 2 lakh employees that big brands like ours, employ, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that social is one of the very important touch points. Today it is probably one of the most trusted touch point, the brand owned handle. So as marketers, I think we also have the responsibility of keeping it very sacrosanct and not cluttering the feeds of people with a host of content. So I think there's a system which is needed, and big brands definitely follow it, right? Like the brand identities are very clearly defined. The brand purpose is very clearly defined. There are style guides, there are brand guidelines which are very, clearly defined. It also really boils down to how you're implementing this, right? I think there's massive amount of trainings that brands need to do, not just with internal teams, but also with agency partners for that matter. Also with channel partners, like I said, also with storefronts. That's really where the business is happening, right? And I think a lot of consistent audits are needed so that, if there are, and one is surely, going to find something which is, out or whatever. So I think the mechanisms really, call for this, and that's how consistency gets maintained. I'll take a quick example of retail. I spent many years at a retail restaurant brand, KFC. Extremely popular, very high brand recall, but it comes through years and years of systems in place, right? The Colonel Sanders logo, highly recognizable. Even if the brand logo was stripped off, people would say, hey, KFC uncle. So that's the kind of brand recall which gets built years on, year after year, country on country. So it's the rigor which goes behind it. So even for a product launch, we would write the script for a cashier who was actually selling our product so that it was consistent across hundreds of stores. So it's consistency, rigor, discipline, all coming together.
Understood. In fact, a follow-up on that, because we still have the social media as a big part of it. Do you also see any difference in how Indian brands approach social and how international brands approach social?
Yeah, so there are some key differences, but obviously it all ties through a string of common objectives. Look, obviously social is a touch point, okay? It's reflective of the company priorities in a region. Now, brand priorities in a certain country may be slightly different from probably another region. So I'll just take a small example. For example, for probably a large B2B org, early careers might be a very, very big cohort where employer branding teams are trying to get newer talent into the organization. Now, what channel do you go to, right? Probably a TikTok is very popular in Brazil, extremely popular in Thailand, Malaysia, US, of course, there's legislation, etc., right? So I think the nuances really boil down to real priorities, the brand priorities, how popular the platform is in the country, the sensibilities of the platform into the brand objective. Another quick example is probably a Reddit. Still picking up in India, it's getting very popular slowly, extremely popular in the US. Very, very popular for community building, for tech hiring, tech products, very, very good community. So I think it truly is evolving as a space. It will obviously have different messaging for different channels, but yeah, completely depends on the brand priorities for a particular region.
Understood. So from legacy brands to, let me come to Nitin, who has spent a lot of time in the startup ecosystem. So while, let's say, a Titan, a Schneider, for example, which has got constant messaging for a very long time, whereas I also work with startups, and in the startups, you do something now, you do something later. At times, there is no coherence. At times, the mantra is, let's do it fast, let's see where it goes, and then let's figure out after that. So there is no template for them. Now, and you have been now with ACKO for about 4-5 years as well. So from a startup point of view, how important is the consistent brand messaging? Because they are going to be the next unicorns, they are going to be the next legacy company. So how important is consistent messaging, comms, etc. for startups?
So I think how important is it? Definitely very important, right? And I think how, that is from my personal experience, like how do you cope with the reality of the startup world that you mentioned, right? Which is, fail and fail fast, a sort of a mechanism to also ensuring that there is consistency, right? So there is the classical answer to it and there is a pragmatic answer to it, right? I think I'll try and give the pragmatic answer to it, right? A lot of the consistency is actually brought alive by the people, who are in that journey every day, right? So for example, like she spoke about, it depends on both how well you've been able to internalize what you think the brand stands for, what is the purpose towards which you're trying to build. Also, external agency partners, I feel, play a very important role, right? Because as a young startup, mostly you are not doing everything, right? You're depending on a partner ecosystem to give you that initial thrust. So how well you've been able to make your external agency partners also to imbibe the essence. It is extremely critical when done well, both on the internal side, on the external side, is I think you see it then translated into some of the classical assets or touch points, which is how consistent is your visual identity, you've made a brand playbook, you are known for certain colors and certain mnemonics in the market, etc. Right? So that's one part of it. I think the second part of it, I think, is again practically very important to understand. You will not be perfect, and it's okay if you're not perfect, right? It will take time for you to get there. At least my current organization, which was a young startup when I joined, and Ola before that, which was a young startup when I joined, right? And I've had, the opportunity to at least spend up to 5 years at both of these startups. Did we get it right from day one? No, we did not. It was a journey. After 1 year or 2 years, if you've been able to have a consistent set of people who are working on the same problem, both internal and external, that is when you see consistency and magic really unfold. You need the same set of people to be motivated towards that goal. If you have a fast churn, your employees are churning, your agencies are churning, it's very difficult to get that initial rigor in. Once that rigor and definition is in place, then I think it's a lot easier for the people who are coming in later to follow through. But like I said, if you're not perfect, don't worry. Even if you get 80% of the things right, you are still probably doing a better job than 80% of the people who are not. So, yeah.
So getting 80% right is more important than getting 100% right, which does not have an end. Interesting. So we have spoken about people, importance of people. We have spoken about importance of systems. We have also spoken about consistency across every part of the business and not just advertising. So great points so far. Now, coming to a completely different profile, Nabajit. You have been on the other side of advertising. I mean, you have been in the media space, a big part of your career. Now, in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, you would have seen how digital became a thing, then how digital plus television became a thing, then how AR has become a thing, then performance, then your technology and the kind of precision targeting which is now available. So, in all sense, you have had the opportunity to actually see how the marketing team and the agency ethos have actually evolved over time. What's your take on it? As an outsider, how have you seen the evolution from a consistency of brand message? Was it different 10 years back? Is it now better? Or it's the other way around? What's your take on it?
Wow, this is, I think this can be a panel discussion in itself, 1 hour long. I'll try and answer this with facts and figures. Let's talk about this year's ADX. Firstly, let's talk about ADX and then digital ADX. ADX for this year, as forecasted at the start of the year, was around 1,20,000 crores rupees. And H1 has been good because of elections, World Cup and cricket, and therefore I'm assuming that number will be touched. Now coming to the most interesting part, digital will be 55 to 60% of this ADEX. So this will be the unprecedented number which digital will achieve. Earlier it was, of course, chasing TV. Last year it crossed TV, but this year it will be, unanimously, beating TV in terms of the number of, amount of monies it will attract. So that way, digital has been growing in the last 5 years, more or less. But then in the 10 years that I've seen, if I have to pick up two channels which have really excited me and which have really exploded in the last 5 years, firstly is e-commerce, because I have been with Flipkart and therefore slight bias towards that. But then Flipkart and Amazon and all the e-commerce sites have been doing really well, double-digit growths every year. And in terms of growing on e-commerce, a lot of brands are digital first these days. They plan their marketing activities focusing on digital, not just TV or radio or other channels. Like for example, I'll give you an example. During my Flipkart days in 2017-18, Boat was not big at that point in time. Aman was not big at that point in time. He came down to Bangalore. Otherwise it happens that Flipkart goes to brands, right? He came down to Bangalore and said, "Ke mujhe brand banana hai e-commerce pe, and I want to make a digital first brand." And at that point in time, when there was not much funding, so he sponsored the Big Billion Day. Usually we associate sponsorship with KBC or IPL. He sponsored Big Billion Day itself, which was the first time we did that year. Apart from MasterCard was also a sponsor. So he thought about all this stuff, and he made a brand out of Boat. And that's what has been happening over the last few years, where digital is so much bigger now. And in terms of the second media, which I can call out, is of course CTV. 45 million users in India who have connected TV in their homes. In the last 1 year, if you study the metro market, you will notice that 47% of the TVs are CTVs now, and 25% of the rest of the people who own traditional TVs are transforming to or moving towards CTV in the next 4-5 months, when the Big Billion Day sale and all those sale will come up. So CTV is like exploding, multi-folds in the last 2 years, and of course in the next few years. So overall, if I talk about digital as a medium, eventually what will come towards is something called living room takeover, where from CTV to radio to not radio, Spotify or the audio mediums, to mobile phones, to laptops, everything will converge, and marketeers will use all the devices inside the living room and take it over to build a brand narrative or talk to the user across multiple devices. So that's what my prediction is about digital. And of course, 60%, it'll grow towards 70. Of course, we are still behind US, UK, but then we'll definitely touch that number.
I mean, interesting or scary, I don't know. But the big thing is, I didn't know that Boat actually sponsored Big Billion Day.
They are sponsored this year as well.
So
following my previous company.
Interesting. And 50 to 60% ADEX on digital, again, unheard of, right?
You get a logo presence, you get premium inventory, you get called out as sponsor in their collaterals. Boat presence, yeah.
So the event or the content is Big Billion Day, and I become.
They are called the vibe sponsors or vibe partners of Big Billion Days. Kuch to naam.
Interesting. So yeah, I think 50 to 60% is still in my head, digital ADEX. Now coming to Varun. Now again, this is something interesting for me as well. You have been with CPG category for a very long time. And brand messaging, brand communication are all important, right? But what I have also seen is it's a sticky wicket. Sticky wicket because how do you make that emotional connect, for example? Because it's low on involvement, it's impulse purchase. Compared to, let's say, a high intent category like a Mia by Tanishq or Titan, where there is a certain aspiration, there is a certain involvement per se, right? Whereas CPG is like, it goes like this, brand comes, brand goes. How do you capture the attention? How do you get that emotional connect so that you stay with the consumers for a longer period of time?
We struggle. We struggle there. I mean, this is not a category where people are emotionally connected with. They don't care about it. The only thing that works well in a, let's say, a food space is nostalgia. Something, for example, Maggie plays well. But not everyone can do it, and it's a double-edged sword. In a category like ours, there's no real exit or entry into the category. Unlike, for example, a real estate or insurance or, like you mentioned, for example, washing machine. So people come in and go out of this category. Very difficult to do that, especially when we are trying to target the Gen Z, who are very suspicious of advertising, who absolutely dislike intrusive communication, a very hard crowd to please. Right? So what a brand, especially a brand like ours, which is in the traditional space in a low involvement category, can do is work on three things. First, the consumer. When I say consumer, pick up a very sharp segment. Don't go for the biggest segment. Pick up a segment which is sharp, and the consumers in that segment are actually advocates. They go out and talk about brands and stuff to other people so that it travels. Second is, at the product level, don't go for the best product. Do a very good product which has a very strong product differentiator and a benefit, a functional benefit which can be articulated in 3 words. So simple. At a brand level, what we have learned the hard way is don't talk about the brand at all. We are talking to consumers, so talk about the consumers, not about the brand. Traditional brands like us, I would take some of the blame there, and traditional companies, they are some ways too much in love with their product, too much in love with their brand. They want to keep yapping about it all the time, right? And they think the more they talk about it, the more people will start connecting with it. Used to work, right? Was a proven strategy. It's no longer, it no longer works, like I mentioned, especially with the Gen Z. So we right now are simply happy and feel honored that the consumer has allowed us to exist in their space, in their universe. Right now, if a low involvement product like ours can even manage that, that itself is a massive success, because then you will travel through their journey as they grow up. That is it.
So, being a millennial, I prefer your product over the market leader.
We invented instant noodles.
So, keeping in line with the same line of thought, to Sampurna, you have been with one of the brilliant storytellers in India, Titan, for a very long time, right? I mean, I personally salivate at the kind of ads which comes out of the Titan stable. So, in the emotional connection with the consumers, we believe that storytelling is very important. He's shed some light on how to actually get there from a CPG point of view. From your experience with Titan and all the brands that you might have worked on, where should brands start to create such compelling stories?
I think for once, I agree. I'll start with what he said, that it's about the consumer and not about your brand. A lot of brands start their advertising brief by saying, this is the message I want to put, figure out a 30-second on the basis of that. But I think we'll have to take a step back and see what is the consumer problem that we are solving. Every story has a tension point that you're trying to solve, then the brand comes and solves that problem. I think we need to be very clear about the role of the brand in the consumer's life. We have to accept the fact that we are a tiny percentage of her day. Okay, we are not her entire day. She has many other problems to solve. So we do this, interestingly, most of the good ads that have come out of Titan have not come out through syndicated research insights. Of course, that has its role to play. Desk research, syndicated research, we always do that. They do help us a lot. But most of our good communication has come out with insights that we have gotten by actually personally interacting with the consumers. Most of us spend a lot of time on the shop floor, selling to consumers, talking to them, spending hours with them. We visit their homes. We spend time with their families. Sometimes we even pick up the phone and just talk to a consumer who hasn't shopped for us for the past 1 year. By we, I don't necessarily mean that one research manager, but all brand managers, marketing managers, product managers, business heads, CEOs even. So we give that much amount of time to interacting with the consumer on a face-to-face level, beyond the researches that we do. And the best insights have always come out of this. And if you stay true to that insight, I think everything else follows.
Interesting. Are you guys finding it interesting? Also to add, Titan is one brand or set of brands which always kept the media out, focus on the storytelling, and then we will figure out media later. I mean, I still remember my old days when I was servicing Titan. The principle still remains the same, other than, अच्छा मेरा 30-second का spot है या 20-second का spot है, create a narrative for that. Yeah, what do you do with 20 seconds?
In fact, I remember a few years back when sentiments were very low for Diwali. That is when Tanishq came out with a 3-minute long film called Tanishq Wali Diwali. A lot of people were worried, how will you run a 3-minute film on TV? It will be so expensive, we don't have media monies. But we said, don't worry, even a one exposure will work. And that actually worked. People shared it, it went viral, people shared it with their families, people spoke about it. So as I said, if we are true to the insight, the fact that Tanishq brought families together, the warmth, the emotions, everything else follows.
Brilliant, brilliant.
I think like one interesting thing, right, more about get the creative storytelling right, and like even if it's a long format, it's okay. I think the funny part is like, at least like 2-3 years back, you know, like Meta had this big pitch about thumb stoppers and everything, you know, कि अगर 15 seconds से ज़्यादा ad बन गया करने के लिए, same time you look at the communication that they came up with like a Pooja Didi ad, right, which is about like a 3, and like walking into a meeting when, you know, like you're hearing that and you ask them, okay, like if this is what works, then like why don't you look inside and see what are you doing in the first place, right? So
see, we all love stories. I mean, India's built on stories, right? So stories are important. Now, also consumers at the center, right? Now, to Richa, coming to the technology, the market trends, etc. Now, what I have seen, I mean, in all the work that I have done with multiple brands, certain brands keep social media listening at the center of their social strategy. Right? Now, what's your take on it? Is that the right approach? Is there more and more technologies coming in, more and more trends which you feel that brands should actually imbibe to actually have that consistency going out?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic approach. In fact, social listening augments research, the real, you know, the traditional research very, very well. And I have examples from retail, both e-commerce and traditional retail, and also from, you know, my current role at Schneider. Social listening is today, it's the most real-time response that one can get on a product that's being put out, or it's a fantastic repository of voice of the customer, right? If I'm happy, I'm probably less likely to write on social, but if I'm disgruntled, I'm definitely going to make a lot of noise about it, that's for sure. So, I mean, for a large brand like ours, we actually run a global listening program across countries, across markets, and it cuts across different cohorts like executives. We want to know what's an analyst sitting in a Gartner talking about our executive. Secondly, what kind of crisis is likely to erupt?
Probably come.
Yeah, so we try and be very proactive about some of these things. Similarly, in retail, at Amazon, we were trying to build a seller program for sellers who could export to US, UK, Amazon's other marketplaces. And we ran social listening programs, very intensive efforts, but we were amazed to see the kind of results that were coming in. They were sellers which were asking about how to export on government communities, on Quora, on Reddit. So we actually ended up launching our Quora handle, which has hundreds of very involved sellers. So social listening today is extremely critical, both from a proactive point of view, trying to understand what your consumer is trying to tell you. Secondly, even if you put a product out, it's a great way to understand literally within a couple of hours on what the consumer sentiment is about your product. Does it need tweaks? It's a different story how agile brands are, but it's a wonderful way to be in touch with the consumer.
Absolutely. So yes, listening actually works as your lead indicator of whether you are doing things right, right? Cool. Coming to Nitin. Now, this is again another interesting kind of a question for me. See, insurance is basically a low touch point category. I mean, probably you will have two interactions. One at the time of renewal or when I buy into the insurance brand, or when there is a accident or when there is some sort of a claim which is needed to have, which is basically once or twice in a year. For you, then how do you ensure that you are always there at the top of their mind? I mean, it's like twice in a year you even think of insurance, and in that, how do you actually get to the top? And how do you use technology to actually make it more effective? How do you use it to, and obviously drive efficiency, but then to make it effective?
It's a very tough job, and to that I must admit. But I think, see, I think how we've sort of at least divided it in our minds is that there is some part that advertising can play a role towards that. There is some part that like more pure play content can play around that. And then there is the third part where technology-led engagement can help us do that. So I'll just like take maybe up to 30 seconds to talk about all of that. Like on the advertising part, like we have this internal term called memory structures, okay? And what are these memory structures? These are memory structures which, like for now, we've taken say outdoor and audio, like audio, OTT and radio as two memory structure channels. For the markets that matter to us, you will see us there 52 weeks of the year, right? Because like that touch point is so frequent. That is also a fairly expensive way of doing it, right? But over the last 2 years, when we've been consistent with this strategy, we've seen that it's led to a massive rise in top of mind recall. Unaided awareness has been fairly high for us going into this. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is more towards not advertising, but generally we believe that as a brand, if you are helpful and useful to the consumer throughout the year, it definitely complements all the advertising efforts that you do. So I think last, again, 2-3 years, there's been a lot of concerted effort in terms of our play on YouTube, where we are creating our own content, right? Our play on social media, where the lens is, okay, be helpful, be useful, and can you do it in an entertaining way if you're doing it, right? Then the third part is the more technology-led one, where I think, given the fact that we've been in business now for 6-7 years, right? Specifically for our mature categories, which is, say, the car insurance world, right? I think roughly, if I talk about the top 10 or 12 metros, roughly 50% of the car owners in the last 6-7 years have come and checked us out at least once. Okay, so, you know, since we are direct to consumer, you own that relationship, you own that data of the consumer. That helps us build more propensity models when you know, okay, what is the right time to start reaching out to that customer, when is he more likely to be up for renewal, etc. So that's the more data part of it, where, you know, either through our app or through other CRM channels, we are able to do that job.
Kudos on actually reaching 50% of the customer base or the addressable audience. But again, for me, it's scary. Coming to Varun. Again, I mean, I was going through his LinkedIn profile, and I've seen a lot of content, posts, views on how the D2C brands today have actually used technology much better or adapted to the market trends much better. Now, why do you think, or possibly your views on why traditional guys are not able to actually do that? Or you think they don't? If so, why?
Yes, in the CPG space, I don't think so that traditional companies are not able to catch on to the trends. In fact, they do it before the D2C brands. Where D2C brands do very well is identifying that trend as a feasible business opportunity. Right? Because they are small, they are young, they are brash, they thrive on new product launches. So they have to keep looking for new opportunities and niches. Sometimes they identify a niche which is actually not a big opportunity, but that's fine for them. It wouldn't be fine for a traditional big brand like ours, so we let go of it. Right? But of course, there's that model also, right? They are not as big to be ossified by bureaucracy. They have that risk appetite. They do third-party manufacturing, so it's easy for them to do a quick turnaround. They exist in an environment where they can get a quick feedback and better feedback compared to a traditional one like ours, where there's a lot of delayed feedback. So all of this sort of, makes them act very different than us. So what traditional companies are trying to do, if you see it, learn from D2C and trying to, recreate that DNA, right? So coincidentally, I've been in companies like Nissin, which invented noodles, Kevin Care, which invented the sachets, Wrigley, that popularized chewing gums. So all of them, after reaching a certain scale, do miss what they were, right, when they started off. They want to go back, and it is impossible, right? You can never, a 100-year-old cannot act like a 10-year-old. So what we try to do is, within the same system, create something where they can be what they were. Right? It could be as simple as creating an incubation cell and giving it a free rein, giving its own R&D budget, marketing budget, having that risk appetite, experimentation. Sometimes the bureaucracy, the red tapeism will try to cap that, but that is the challenge, right? Even in when we've tried doing a D2C model, right? We as in traditional FMCG companies, the ones which are more successful right now are the ones who have acquired a D2C and then allowed them to operate outside the regular structure. Whenever it has been treated as a new division, they've thrown money at it, and I'm talking about the biggest of the FMCGs, right? Wink, wink. But they have not been able to make it successful simply because they are too big and they don't want to fail.
Understood. So, keeping with all the trends and market trends and technology, to Nabajit, digital is now fragmented, or media is fragmented. Brands are going after precision, which is against what I stand for, or I believe in the long run, obviously. But in your field, where a lot of brands are going hyper-local, right? It's been a buzzword for quite some time, and I'm sure it will be a buzzword for quite some more time. How can brands actually embrace it, make it more effective, make it more efficient? Both maybe at a India level, maybe at an international level. What are the potential pitfalls, challenges that you have, which others can use?
Awesome. Regarding hyperlocal, you can Google it, how it functions. But what I'll share is an example so that you understand better how hyperlocal has really helped some of the biggest brands in the world. So this example is from 2019 when Burger King quickly realized that McDonald's is like, growing like 2 times, 3 times compared to them, number of stores, number of people visiting. So they decided, and especially the marketing team from US, UK, and I think some part of Asia also, they kind of huddled together and they said, okay, is Gopal ka kuch karna padega? Sorry, Bollywood reference. So they decided, let's do one thing. Let's target these stores of McDonald's, geofence them, and then target people who are walking into these stores. So they targeted US, UK, and Asian country stores of McDonald's, geofence 20 meters around the store, and then whoever goes into McDonald's, they get a ping or maybe a display banner or a video, some communication from Burger King which says that you stand a chance to win a 1 cent burger. Now 1 cent is 1 rupee. So that is very aggressive, right? So they are giving out 1 cent burgers to people only who are going inside McDonald's. But then the user has to do 2 things. Firstly, he or she has to download the Burger King app and then click on a button which was called Escape the Clown. Now, at that point in time, if you remember, 2019 was the movie It came out. So it kind of coincided with that Escape the Clown in the movie also and in here in real life also. And then to add another layer, they put a timer to the user. For example, if you are in McDonald's, you see the ad, you have 5 minutes to go, and also, of course, there is a map which pops out, which shows you that the nearest Burger King is 5 minutes away. The user has to click on the Escape the Clown button and then rush to the Burger King to avail that 1 cent burger. Otherwise, he would have been enjoying McDonald's also and also grabbing that 1 cent burger, right? So that kind of, that 9-10 day campaign got 1.5 million downloads of Burger King app, I think 18 or 15%, I forgot the percentage, of increased walk-ins to Burger King stores. And it was a case study which is still, and I am repeating after 5 years, right? So this is the great thing about hyperlocal, how it functions and enables, especially brands with brick and mortar kind of arrangement and branches and showrooms to help get them, new customers or maybe poach customers of their competitors as well.
Great. So technology and media, or the way it has evolved, need not be just about efficiency, it can also be effectiveness. So that's something which is great. So yeah, it's great. So again, 2-3 things which stood out for me. Consumers are still at the center of everything that we do. Branding is not about advertising, it is about marketing, wherein the product, the price to some extent, the consumers, the people, everything is very important. It still is. So let's go back to the 4 P's of marketing rather than let's do something digital. So that's the second big thing. Third, which actually stood out, was on how traditional brands could also try to see what the startups are doing or the D2C brands are doing, and how they can be faster and more agile in adopting it. So that is important, because there are certain learnings which rest here, which traditional guys may overlook or may ignore. So let's see how that can be added to it. So yeah, great. So that's it from our side. Great having you guys here. I hope you guys also enjoyed. I learned a lot. I hope you also got some nuggets of information which was exclusive to this panel. So thanks, guys. Yeah.